work out whether I still stay here.
Oh, is this where you're planning your...
Yeah. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're keeping well. We have something different today, and I've got the wonderful Teresa.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Thank you for being here. So I'm going to be interviewing Teresa. As I said previously, I want this to be a platform where you can hear the experiences of other parents with children with additional needs. And Teresa's our first one.
And I'm so privileged, honestly, and it's lovely that you asked me, Simone. An opportunity to share is just, as you know, something I just think it's so essential to do. So yeah, I'm excited to be able to be your first guest to be interviewed. So that's wonderful.
Okay, so let's go.
Yes.
Right. Okay, someone's taken my place. We are now joined with Jacob. Hello, Jacob.
So hello, Jacob. Good boy.
So Teresa, tell me a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yes, so I'm Teresa, and I'm mum to Hannah and Jacob, who are twins, and they are 10 years old now, double digits. And I'm an interior designer. It's what I studied, it's what I've always been passionate about, and self-employed. Doing lots of work at the moment, which I'm really passionate about as well, around creating awareness about children with special educational needs. Jacob has a syndrome, a rare syndrome called Kabuki syndrome, and it's just been an interesting journey. It really has been, in learning about Jacob and his needs, about his syndrome, and that's why it's honestly, it's just such a privilege to be here with Simone on her channel to be able to share.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about Jacob's syndrome.
Yeah, so Hannah and Jacob were born premature, so at 30 weeks, that's when I was told there were complications, and it was Jacob. His blood flow was struggling, I was told. So it was then regular scans, and then by 32 weeks, I was told that they would have to come early. And whilst they were in the special care baby unit, it was quite clear that Jacob had health issues. Hannah put on her weight very quickly. They were born very tiny. Jacob was only £2.7. And Hannah was £3.10. But Hannah put on her weight very quickly, so it was clear that, you know, with feeding, she just progressed throughout the system of the special baby unit. But Jacob stayed in intensive care that much longer, and 2 months later, Jacob was still in hospital. Had one of his first procedures. He was transferred to Royal London Hospital, to a London hospital, for his first of many procedures. And that's when, yes, it was clear, it was evidence from then that there were health complications with him. It was quite challenging, because when you've got a child that's presented with these health issues, then you are having to go to lots of follow-up appointments, because then it's having the reason identified as to why Jacob was having so many health issues. His growth was slow, there was lots of reflux as well, so he, as much as he wasn't putting on weight, he was also always bringing food up. So there was lots of concerns, and with all the after they came out of hospital, there was lots of follow-up appointments, and then it was clear that Jacob had a syndrome, and it took 2 years for them to finally diagnose Jacob's syndrome. And that was after speculations of so many different types, different ones. I used to research them beforehand, but then I stopped doing that. I just thought, God will guide this. And then it just took us, we had to be referred to a specialist geneticist at Great Ormond Street. As we went into the appointment and just talking about it, and Jacob's, the health issues, she just took one look at Jacob and said, I know which syndrome this is. I'm quite sure I know which syndrome. It's a syndrome called Kabuki, which is a rare syndrome. And she looked at characteristics and pointed out characteristics that I'd never even seen or even thought of anything as, you know, characteristics of a syndrome. So just his eye shapes, she said, was the first clear characteristic of this syndrome. And then she pointed out things, even his fingertips, the shape of his finger pads. Yeah, just, and she said, oh, have you noticed the way his finger pads are, which he's got little points on his finger pads. because Kabuki children, their finger pads, they don't flatten. His bloods were sent off again.
Just going back, you mentioned about the eye shape. What was it about the eye shape that was so...
Yeah, the eye shape is really, really key actually, because Kabuki syndrome is named after the Japanese style of eye makeup, where the eye makeup style, they accentuate the shape of their eyes in the theatre. Okay. So Kabuki is named after the theatre in Japan. So children, that is one of the main characteristics, is their eye shape. Jacob is deaf as well. So she said many children born with Kabuki syndrome are born deaf also. So when the bloods went off and they came back, we met with her again, and she said, yes, I can confirm, as I thought, it's Kabuki syndrome. And the question was, how do you feel, when she told me about the characteristics of it. Even before, when she went even any further, it was the relief after 2 years to know that the syndrome had now been identified. Yeah. Then Jacob was sent off for many more tests, really, because it can affect their heart shape. It can also affect the shape of their organs. Tests that Jacob went through for his heart, kidneys, thanking God they were all fine. There were just other many growth abnormalities, where Jacob then went on to have a procedure for his... It does affect children's ears, nose and throat. That's where many children are born deaf. Jacob had a narrow airway, they discovered. So he had to have that stretched very slowly, and that took over a course of 2 years. Wow. Under anaesthetic, and slowly they had to... balloon dilatation, it was called, where they slowly had to stretch his airway until they felt that it was right. So that was a lot for him to experience. So every 4 months it was known that he'd go back under anaesthetic to go through that procedure again. Yeah.
So how did you manage that? Did you have a support network? How did you manage those difficult couple of years?
Yeah, that's a really, honestly, Simone, it's because you just, and I know speaking on behalf of many parents and those that I share with, it becomes all you just have to be strong and just be ready and be prepared for helping your child when they've got these health needs, but then also knowing you've got to draw strength to just keep going. When you've got to keep going through these procedures, it's so overwhelming. But I think, just what pulled me through, and this, I think really just watching Jacob more than anything else, that was my real strength. My faith, praying to God to guide us through each step of the way and each procedure. I think externally it's really difficult for anyone to really understand, to search for support elsewhere. That was my experience, because I think we can all share when it's your lived experience, only you're going to know the feelings and what you're going through. As much as you try and explain it to others, it's very, very difficult for anyone else to really understand. So I think it's really, you draw strength from your children. It's amazing how resilient they are, if that's to encourage parents, as daunting as it is, but it's amazing how much, the strength that they have, the determination to get over these procedures. So at times when I'd feel quite worn out with the experience, I would see Jacob's energy, and they do call them Kabuki warriors. That is something that we do call them because of this energy and this determination. Then I'd see him bounce back, and then I'd feel like, well, I need to just pull myself together and and just draw strength from his strength. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, what would you say was one of your most challenging times or your most challenging moments?
I think, maybe going back to the expectation of others to understand what you're going through and understand your child who has a disability. Yeah. And I think that has been an experience really, because it's such a conditioned society, isn't it, really, with people's views on those with disabilities. And I think, for that to be shown even towards children with disabilities, where children, they don't see that they've got a disability. Jacob, he gets up and embraces each day with such joy. The way he embraces others, he just shows so much love to others. Hannah, his twin sister, and it's incredible, as young carers that they are, they naturally, her protection over her twin brother. So you feel like, you're just, you appreciate, you see Jacob, you see his joy. And then I think that's definitely been my most challenging, is then the others, their views on your child, which can be quite negative. So yes, I think that's been the most challenging.
Yeah. And how's he doing at school?
It's been an incredible progress over the last how many months, because in September Jacob started in a specialist school, and that was just the best move ever. I think there are, which I'll put my hand up to, there are these perceptions that we make around special needs schools. I was quite set on making sure that both Hannah and Jacob attended a mainstream school together, which they did. And during that time, that's a challenge. That has been, when talking about, you know, perceptions that are made on your child. I think now that Jacob is in a specialist school where he's in an environment that he's comfortable, where there are those that really understand his needs, that provide the right resources for him to learn, it's really shown the difference that makes to a child. You know, a child in the right setting, it can make such a difference in them showing their learning ability. And regardless, you know, we all want our children to learn, to have an education. They are entitled to have an education like every child. And yeah, I'd say the specialist school has allowed that to happen, because Jacob, over the last term, in his potential that he's showing in his speech and language, in the fact he's now writing his name, there's just progress. Yeah, so yeah, Jacob at school now, it's been like life changing. Yeah. It's a whole different experience now watching him learn.
And if there was anything you wanted someone who didn't have a disabled child or didn't know much about disability at all, what would you like them to know?
Gosh, so much. And this is, you know, if it does encourage others at the start of the journey as well. Communication is so important. Going back to trying to create better understanding, I would say, in particular with like family, I think when looking at it now, it's important to bring family together and to try and open up the conversation. I think opening up the conversation relates to many areas. The family dynamic around your child with a disability, as I said about how conditioned the society is, to strengthen that within the family and around your child. And because of people's perceptions, you know, there's not much we can do about that except open up the conversations and make it comfortable to talk about. It's okay, Jacob, you know, is deaf. I'm growing him as a deaf child. And it was amazing how people find using that word, to use the word deaf, they found that. But again, it's because of just how society is. But it's okay to say deaf. Jacob will grow knowing he has a deafness, and to be proud of that. So I think, you know, with the narrative needs to change, doesn't it, really? I think that's what it is. And the awareness of those with disabilities, our children with disabilities, to really just to bring that into the education system. I do think the education system can do more in celebrating children with disabilities, to try and to help with changing that narrative, if anything. I think the education system can definitely do more in celebration. It's great that they include our children into mainstream schools, but celebrate them, celebrate their differences, celebrate the fact that they need to learn differently. And then also your voice, being a voice for your child, because of the way it is, it's really important that you don't hold back, you do speak up and push things forward as much as you can.
Yeah. Because I know for many parents out there, sometimes they don't know where to start.
Yes.
Or they might be intimidated, you know. So I think I liked what you said there. Is don't give up.
Can't give up.
Keep fighting.
You can't give up.
Persevering and opening those conversations.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, Simone, with what you're doing, you know, I think more of this is needed. It's creating the opportunities, it's creating the platforms for parents to share their experiences for those that don't know how to access. And it's not readily available, that's the thing. You know, when you're given a diagnosis for your child, as daunting, as overwhelming as it is, with a rare syndrome, it really was, because, you know, we was going to hospital appointments where, you know, professionals, they would be sitting there researching Kabuki syndrome because they've not heard of it. So you're so overwhelmed by it all because it's a syndrome that there's not much facts or history about. You know, where there is not as much understanding, and there still isn't. It hasn't changed enough, has it really? So I think you've got to be prepared to be mindful of that and then know that, you know, that means your voice is needed for your child, really, because you will see the skill and the gifts in your child and their determination. So to be that voice for them, to push them in the right direction.
Fantastic. One more thing. What have you done to make sure that your mental health remains healthy and that you're there for your children? Have you got any tips that you could share?
Yes, self-care is so important. And I would say one of the biggest things to do, one of the main key things, is surround yourself with those that understand. It's so easy to be so tunnel vision because it really feels like it becomes your journey. And as I mentioned before, because of, you know, trying to and hope that other people will understand and it doesn't, that can be quite draining, that can be quite disappointing, and how it can make you feel emotionally. So I think it was when starting to reach out to share with other mothers, the network of wonderful mothers that I have who've also got deaf children, and we sit and it's amazing our conversations, you know, that to us it's so just natural, but then you think, gosh, if other mums were sitting there and they didn't have children who were deaf or with disabilities, can you listen to us? Because, you know, we're talking about hospital appointments that we need to go to, our children losing their hearing aids and you know what that can do. But then when you're sitting with those, when you're sitting with others that share that same journey, you find you can laugh about these things, you know, it makes it so much easier to talk about, and you're learning from each other as well. So I think that's one of the main things, is surround yourself with those, find platforms, Facebook groups. I'm on one which has for parents and families with deaf children. So there's events that you can go to where you all get to meet your children, and it's joy to meet other parents, and for your children to be with other children who have got the same syndrome or disability. That in itself gives a lot of peace of mind, because then you realise you're not alone. I think that's the real big thing, is that whole thing of you're not alone in this. There are others that are sharing the same journey and experiences. So I think that's one of the main things, to do.
Bye then. Bye. Thank you for coming.
And he's off.
Bye then. That was amazing. No, that was thank you so much for your time. I feel honoured, like this is my first interview, and how amazing were you?
How amazing were you, Simone? No, thank you so much for the opportunity. You know, as I said before, it was a privilege for you to ask me to be your first person to interview, and providing the chance to share. So no, thank you so much.
And Jacob, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh. So, Teresa's doing amazing stuff, people. She is on social media. You might be on the BBC next, won't you? Speaking to existence. So what I'll do, I'll put all of Teresa's information in the description box, and she's got her own YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, it's just started, and it's again just a chance to share, to encourage. Really the main focus is watching Hannah and Jacob as twins, and their relationship. Hannah as a young carer for Jacob, and also to show Jacob's learning ability. Jacob is learning through music, so that's where I think it's so important to show children's gifts, their learning abilities, their different way of learning, and Jacob is showing just what is possible. So to be able to share that,
breaking through those barriers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that is amazing. Okay, so head over to Teresa's channel, support it. Just remember, everyone, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we're in this together. Take care. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Yay!
Well done.